So the first round of the NHL draft has came and gone. It was last night, and there was a lot of surprises with teams, kind of going off the board and selecting players that people really didn't expect them to. It was exciting to watch rounds 2 to 7 get underway in about 2 hours, so I want to get this up before then and give you guys something to watch, get you ready for round 2 to 7 if you are going to watch them. So starting off, the Devils, obviously they do select Jack Hughes, centerman out of the U.S. National Development Program. What a program that is. They have developed some studs. I believe like 7 or 8 players from that went in the first round, which is super impressive, and I definitely think that is a trend we're going to see continue in the coming years. But I love the pick by New Jersey. Some people thought they'd go with Kaapo, but in the end, they did ultimately go with Jack Hughes, and I think he's going to be a fantastic fit. Playing him alongside of Taylor Hall is going to be just so fun to watch, especially in the offensive end. So Jack Hughes to the New Jersey Devils. They get a franchise centerman, and hopefully that can, turn them around and they can get back to working towards being a playoff team like they were last year. Number 2, obviously Kaapo. We knew what 1 and 2 were going to be. We pretty much knew the order they were going to go in as well. Like I said, some people maybe thought Kaapo 1, Hughes 2, but from basically everyone, the expectation was, 1 and 2, Hughes and Kaapo, and then after that, the draft would really start and we'd start to see some surprises, and that is exactly what happened. At number 3, everyone, including myself, thought it was either going to be Bowen Byram or Alex Turcotte selected by the Blackhawks, but they decided to go with Kirby Dach from Saskatoon of the WHL. He's a big centerman. I think he will be a good fit for the team if he does realize his potential. He's definitely probably a year or 2 out. I don't think he's going to come in and play immediately, but still, obviously the Chicago Blackhawks liked Kirby Dach a lot, and I find in this draft that is what happened with a lot of teams. I feel like a lot of teams had completely different draft boards and players that they liked. Other teams really weren't focused on whatsoever, and that's why I feel like we saw some surprises. So Kirby Dach, number 3 to the Chicago Blackhawks. At number 4, in my opinion, I think an unreal fit, an unreal pick for the Colorado Avalanche, Bowen Byram. Imagine a defense of Bowen Byram and Cale Makar, and then Tyson Barrie and Samuel Girard in the future. They really are loaded up, especially when you consider how many good forwards they have as well, and they got a pretty decent player later on in the draft as well. So I think they have to be ecstatic that Bowen Byram slipped to number 4 for them. I think he's going to be in the NHL sooner rather than later, and I definitely think he's going to be a fantastic offensive defenseman for them. Colorado fans and their organization has to be pretty pumped about that. Number 5, Alex Turcotte went to the LA Kings. I like this pick a lot. The Kings don't really have the deepest prospect pool, strictly because they've been a good team for so long, really, besides last season. Now that they have guys like Rasmus Kupari, Gabriel Velarde, Carl Grundstrom, and now you throw in Alex Turcotte and Bjorn Foote that they got later on in the first round, they're really starting to develop a decent prospect pool that is going to benefit them a lot in the future. And Alex Turcotte was the second best player on the U.S. National Development Team program, and that is saying something because that was a stacked team, and a lot of people say he got overshadowed by Jack Hughes, and if this was another draft, he would be a top 3 pick hands down. So even though that he is like 2 years out from the NHL and he is going to play in the NCAA next year, I think if you're a Kings fan, you still have to be very, very excited about this draft pick. And now at number 6, I'm sure a lot of you guys want to know my opinion on this. I was tweeting with people throughout the whole night. If you guys don't follow me on Twitter, link is always in the description. I was tweeting throughout the whole draft with you guys. I probably will be through rounds 2 to 7 as well. I have to go out and do some things, so I might miss a little bit, but I'm going to try to catch what I can and make videos on any trades if they do happen on day 2 of the draft. But nonetheless, getting back, Moritz Seider, a defenseman from Germany, drafted number 6 by the Detroit Red Wings, and the highest I saw him going was around like 10 to 14 in mock drafts, but I'm not too worried about this pick. Originally when I heard his name called, I was like, are you serious? Like, what? Because I wanted either Dylan Cousins or Trevor Zegras, but Moritz Seider, he was fantastic in the World Championships as such a young defenseman, playing against NHL caliber players. He did really well there, and he's a big guy. I think he can play in the NHL or even the American Hockey League really soon, potentially as soon as next season, especially for a team like Detroit who's really weak on the blue line. So, after a while, I kind of convinced myself to be rather excited about this pick. I know a lot of other YouTubers were really high on Mo Seider. Gio from Lego Rocks Gaming, who talks about the Canucks, was a guy who I always watched his videos on Moritz Seider because I wasn't really too familiar with him, but seeing him in the World Champions and stuff, and it looked like Steve Yzerman was really happy with the pick. After the selection, Elliot Friedman interviewed Steve Yzerman and said, it was kind of a curveball pick. What made you guys go off the board? And Steve Yzerman said it wasn't a curveball curveball to us. They really liked what they saw from him in the World Championships. Jeff Blashill was coaching Team USA at the World Championships, and Steve Yzerman was talking about how much Jeff Blashill liked him. So I'm pretty excited about this pick now after really taking it in, and I trust Steve Yzerman. He did something amazing in Tampa Bay, and I definitely think he is going to be a good pick. The one thing I was kind of mad about, I was never really mad about the player because I liked him as a player. I love his name. I just like big defensemen, and one from Germany who was young, played well in the World Championships. I was, just a fan of him, but I thought he would go later. So what I was initially mad about is that I thought we could have drafted down and got some more assets and then selected him with a later pick, but nonetheless, Steve Yzerman didn't want him to be selected, ended up taking him at number 6, and I'm fine with it. I'm very curious to hear what fellow Red Wings fans think, so make sure you guys let me know down in the comment section. But nonetheless, at number 7, Dylan Cousins went to the Buffalo Sabres. Another 6'3" big centerman, right-handed shot. He's coming from Lethbridge of the WHL, and I think this is a really good pick for Buffalo as well, especially if he can play, what he's hyped up to be and what his potential is. If he can do that in the NHL, I definitely think their center core moving into the future is fantastic with guys like Casey Middlestat, Dylan Cousins, and obviously Jack Eichel leading the way. So I like that pick a lot for the Buffalo Sabres. Next up, the Edmonton Oilers decided to go with defenseman Phillip Broberg from AIK of Sweden. He's a left shot defenseman, but Edmonton, they could use all the help they can get really anywhere. But in my opinion, I thought they were going to go with one of the dynamic wingers and try to get a winger that you could potentially pair with Connor McDavid for the future. A guy like Cole Caulfield, who blew my mind that he slipped to number 15. A guy like Matthew Boldy, or even like a center like Trevor Zegras, who you could potentially move to the win. Peyton Krebs, any of those guys, I thought they were going to try to get some offensive help and find a guy that they could potentially play with Connor McDavid so that he wouldn't have to, keep flipping through line mates what it seems every couple of games. But nonetheless, they decided to go with the defenseman. Hopefully it pays off for them. I'm not too familiar with Phillip Broberg, so I guess you'd have to, go research him yourself a little bit, but I don't want to take too much time on this video, so I'm going to start to speed up a little bit, especially since we're kind of at the point of the draft where I'm less familiar with players as it goes on. But Trevor Zegras goes number 9 to the Anaheim Ducks. I like this pick a lot. Now they have Sam Steele, Max Jones. They're really starting to develop a nice prospect pool as well. Max Comtois is there too. I like to look at this team for the future. I thought Detroit was going to take Trevor Zegras at number 6, but they decided to go a completely different route. But I think Anaheim Ducks fans should be pretty pumped about this because a lot of people had Zegras going in the top 6. Some even had him going as high as number 3, and getting him at number 9, I think that's a really good pick by the Ducks. Another forward, groom in your development system, and hopefully he can come in and be an impact player eventually. Number 10, Vasily Podkolzin for the Vancouver Canucks. I saw a lot of Canucks fans with mixed emotions on this pick, but a lot of people, Brian Burke especially, is convinced that Podkolzin is the 3rd most talented player in this draft behind Hughes and Kakko, and that is saying something. And he's not coming over to the NHL for another 2 years guaranteed. He's going to be staying in the KHL, and that is most likely what scared a lot of teams away from selecting him, but not Jim Benning, not the Canucks, because they don't really need him to come in right away. They have Pettersson, they have Besser, they have Hughes, they have all of those guys that the fans are already attached to. No one really expects their pick this year to come in right away, and most of the guys around here are probably 2 years out anyway, so I really like this pick a lot for Vancouver, and I honestly think it could be a potential steal. Next up, at the number 11 spot, Victor Soderstrom goes to the Arizona Coyotes. They actually traded up from 14 to 11 to acquire this pick, and then I believe they also gave the Philadelphia Flyers the 45th overall pick, which they will use today in the 2nd round. But nonetheless, Victor Soderstrom, a little bit of an off-the-board pick. I thought they probably could have stayed at 14 and still acquired him there, but it's been a weird draft so far. It's like teams wanted players, and they weren't going to be denied. They're going to get those guys. They weren't going to, move down and risk someone else taking him. So I like that move by Arizona. It shows that they really wanted Soderstrom, and I think that bodes well for his confidence as well. And, a young Swedish defenseman, what better team to learn from than the Arizona Coyotes, a team whose captain is a Swedish defenseman, a really good offensive defenseman. I think he can teach Victor Soderstrom well. Next up, Minnesota Wild get Matthew Boldy at number 12, and I really like this pick for them. He's a 6'2" winger, has an excellent release, was a member of the U.S. National Development Program. Like I said, just stacked. You're going to hear that a lot throughout this video, but he is a winger who can fill the net. He can play make as well, and I definitely think when he does make it to the NHL, probably in a year or two, he will be a guy who we could see put up a lot of points and, really fill the net. So I like that pick a lot for Minnesota, and, they can use all the help they can get in terms of prospects as well. Number 13, I'm pretty sure everyone everyone and their dog and their grandmother had Spencer Knight going to the Florida Panthers. They need a goaltender if they do strike out this offseason in free agency with, just James Reimer and Roberto Luongo there. We don't even know what Luongo's future is. So getting Spencer Knight, a goaltender who obviously won't come in and help right away, but having someone for the future who could potentially be a number one in like 4 to 5 years, having that in the system is definitely really nice. So I like that pick. Next up, the Philadelphia Flyers, who traded down to get this pick, eventually select Cam York, another guy from the U.S. National Development Team. He led all players in the program with 65 points and 132 shots on goal in 63 games. Super impressive. He's 5'11", 172 pounds. I think he has a bright future in the NHL in terms of being potentially a power play quarterback. Maybe not like a top tier two-way defenseman, but I think he can bring some really good offensive upside, play maybe on a second pairing role, like I said, be a quarterback of one of the two power plays. I think he has a bright future. I know a lot of Flyers fans were mad that they didn't select Caulfield, but nonetheless, I'm a fan of Cam York, and I definitely think they're not going to regret that pick. And then Montreal, in my opinion, potentially the steal of the first round. They get Cole Caulfield at 15th overall. He's only 5'7", 163 pounds, and I think that is why a lot of GMs decided to stay away from him. I know a lot of people, including myself, had him going in the top 10. When he was drafted, I heard a lot of, the insiders and Brian Burke especially comparing him to a guy like Alex DeBrincat. He can fill the net. Him and Jack Hughes were quite the dynamic duo, so I really like this pick for Montreal. I think they should be super pumped about it. They're going to get an elite winger. Yes, he is only 5'7", but it doesn't matter. In today's game, there is so many smaller players succeeding, so I don't know why that still continues to scare GMs away from players. Last time we saw that, look at Alex DeBrincat now, 40 goal scorer in just his second year after slipping to the second round. Now 16th overall, the Colorado Avalanche select Alex Newhook. So they came out of the first round with Bowen Byram and Alex Newhook. I think they should be pretty pumped about that. He played for Victoria of the BCHL last year. He led the league with 102 points in 53 games. I believe he was like the youngest leading scorer in that league in history, so that's pretty impressive. They're getting a guy who, yes, obviously is probably a couple years out, but Alex Newhook does have a lot of offensive upside. He has a lot of upside to develop a 200-foot game. I honestly could see him being a potential second-line center or a very, very good third-line center, in the coming years for the Colorado Avalanche. Next up, another player who I think could be the potential steal of the first round. Vegas Golden Knights select Peyton Krebs, 17th overall. A big reason why he slipped down the draft, in my opinion, is because he just came off surgery to repair a torn Achilles tendon. He's going to be off the ice all summer repairing, but it's not like he was going to play in the NHL, as soon as next season anyway. So if he gets healthy and, gets back to where he was at, mid-season and beginning of the year when a lot of people thought he was going to be a top 10 pick, this is a steal for the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think they should be pretty pumped about that. They have another really good prospect in their pool, and they're a team that traded away a lot of their top end prospects, and it seems like they're already doing a pretty fantastic job of replenishing that system. Now from here on out, I'm not really too familiar with these players, so I'm going to try to go through it a little bit quicker. The Dallas Stars selected Thomas Harley, 18th overall, an offensive defenseman out of Mississauga from the OHL. He had 58 points in 68 games, was voted most improved player and best offensive defenseman in the league by Eastern Conference coaches, so that's a pretty impressive thing for such a young guy, so I like that pick there. Next up, the Ottawa Senators select Lassie Thompson with their only first round pick. Man, I bet you they were salty looking at the Colorado Avalanche selecting Bowen Byram. But that's the risk you take when you trade future first round picks when you don't really know where you're going to end up. So Lassie Thompson, a defenseman from Kelowna of the WHL, he had 17 goals and 24 assists in 63 games and was third among WHL rookies with 7 power play goals. He was named WHL Western Conference Rookie of the Year and a Western Conference second team All-Star. So, for such a young guy, he had a pretty fantastic season in the WHL. Hopefully he can become a pretty solid player for them because, like I said, they need all the help they can get. Next up, 20th overall, the Winnipeg Jets select Ville Enola, a Finnish defenseman. He was ranked number 4 for international skaters from Central Scouting. I think this is a pretty good pick. They just traded away Jacob Trouba, so I guess drafting a prospect defenseman to potentially fill that hole in the future is a smart move, and they have some pretty good luck with the Finnish players like Christian Vesalainen, Patrick Laine, Sami Niku, and stuff like that, so, they might as well be called the Winnipeg Jets soon because they definitely like their Finnish players. But that's all I really got to say about him because, like I said, I'm not too familiar with them, so, I'm not your guy for all the, bottom tier prospects in terms of the first round. So I know a decent amount about the top 10 and the top 15 and stuff like that, but from here on out, I'm not too sure. I was learning new just as you guys were last night watching the draft. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, they went with Samuel Poulin, a right wing from Sherbrooke of the QMJHL. He's 6'1", 212. A lot of people said he's going to be a very solid power forward in the NHL. I believe they had his potential as being, a top 6 winger and a really good power forward. So hopefully he can do well for them. He had 14 goals and 25 assists in his final 30 regular season games in the Q. Some pretty good numbers there, and he handles face-off responsibilities well, it says here, when he's called upon. So it looks like a decent and a safe pick there for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Next up, at 22nd overall, the Los Angeles Kings select Tobias Bjorn, a defenseman, played in the Swedish Junior League this past season, had 22 points and a plus 15 rating in 39 games over there. So it seems like the LA Kings did pretty well for themselves getting Turcotte and Bjorn in the first round. This 22nd pick was the pick from the Leafs that they did get in the Jake Muzzin trade, so drafting a defenseman, it makes sense. And then next up, 23rd, the New York Islanders select Simon Holmstrom. This is a player that I think was projected to go like second round in most of the mock drafts I looked at. He's a 6'1", 193-pound left-hand shot, plays a power forward type game, is strong along the boards and in front of the net, and he's a good skater. He had 20 points in 21 games for HV71 in Sweden's junior division this season. So, next year he's probably going to play over there in Sweden again and hopefully build on the strong season that he had this year. Next up, the Nashville Predators selected Phillip Tomasino out of Niagara from the Ontario Hockey League, and I think Tomasino dropped a couple of spots. Most of the mock drafts I looked at had him going like 16-20 range, so I think Nashville has to be pretty pumped that they get him. He's a 6', 183-pound centerman. He's a dynamic skater, capable of creating time and space while generating good scoring opportunities. He had 72 points in 67 games. He led the Ontario Hockey League with 12 game-winning goals, the most by any player in the league since New York Islanders prospect Michael Dal Cole. So, I think they're getting a pretty solid prospect with the 24th overall pick, and, maybe they have themselves another Eli Tolvanen situation where they get, one of the best prospects from the draft super late. So next up, 25th overall, Connor Mcmichael from the London Knights to the Washington Capitals. He's a 6', 182-pound centerman. A lot of good centermen, in the bottom half of the draft, it seems like. He had 72 points in 67 games in his first full season for London, after being traded there from Hamilton, I believe, in part of that Robert Thomas trade. So hopefully Washington has a player who could, eventually be a top 9 forward for them in the future. The Calgary Flames, they decided to go with Jakob Pelletier. Hopefully I'm saying that right. He was ranked number 27 from North American Skaters by NHL Central Scouting. He's 5'9", 165 pounds. So Calgary, they like their smaller guys. It really worked out when they selected Johnny Gaudreau. He was 7th in Quebec Major Junior League with 89 points, and he scored 9 power play goals in 65 games. It says here he possesses elite hockey sense and can outthink opponents to beat them in open areas of the ice. So it looks like they're getting a really talented player. Another guy who probably dropped down a couple of spots because of his smaller stature, but 89 points in 65 games in the Q, that is super impressive. Next up, Nolan Foote, drafted to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it's pretty cool that now they have Cal Foote and Nolan Foote. So maybe Tampa Bay can do a good job of developing these two in the system together, and then maybe, you never know, we could see the brothers in the NHL in no time. Next up, 28th overall, Ryan Suzuki to the Carolina Hurricanes. He definitely dropped a little bit, but this is around the range that a lot of people expected him to go. He led Barrie with 75 points, 28 power play points, and 4 game-winning goals in 65 games, so he has some great offensive upside. Brian Burke said he's a much better skater than his brother Nick Suzuki, so, I think Carolina has to be pretty ecstatic getting a guy who has that much upside at the 28th overall pick. Next up, at number 29, Braden Tracy, a left winger from Moose Jaw, to the Anaheim Ducks, their second pick of the first round. So getting Zegras and Tracy, they're really starting to build up their prospect pool there. He's 6', 170 pounds. He made one of the biggest jumps in Central Scouting's final ranking of North American skaters, from number 73 all the way up to number 21. So, a pretty significant jump there. He had 81 points, 36 goals, 45 assists, and 12 power play goals in 66 regular season games in the WHL. He was also tied for first in the league with 11 game-winning goals. So he's got a lot of offensive upside. And usually these are the type of players that go later in the first round, kind of hit or miss guys that, could come in and be the players that were a junior, or they could not, you never know. Next up, John Beecher, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. I don't remember how they were saying it last night, to the Boston Bruins at the number 30 spot. Another guy from the U.S. National Development Team program. He's 6'3", 212 pounds, and a lot of people say this could be a hidden gem because he was really overlooked and didn't get too much, time to shine because he was playing behind so many talented players on that U.S. national team, like Jack Hughes, obviously like Alex Turcotte, Cole Caulfield, Cam York, Knight, Boldy, all of those guys. But Beecher, look out for him because he potentially could be a steal for the Bruins. And now the final pick of the first round, the pick that Buffalo got from St. Louis, I believe, in the Ryan O'Reilly trade. Buffalo Sabres ended up going with defenseman Ryan Johnson from the USHL. He's committed to the University of Minnesota for next season, so hopefully a good season there. And then you never know, maybe he could make the jump to the NHL next year, or maybe he could, take a couple years in the NCAA to really groom his game. I'm a big fan of players that take that route. I think they're the most NHL ready when they show up. So, that rounds out the first round. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. Were you happy with your favorite team's first round selection? Me personally, I'm happy with it. I trust Steve Yzerman. Hopefully Sider can, become a really solid defenseman for us. But I had a lot of fun watching the first round. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, like I said, if you guys have any questions while, watching along with the draft. Rounds 2 to 7 today. Hopefully they can be a little bit more exciting in terms of the trade front than the first round was. Usually that is the case though. Rounds 2 to 7 are where the trades start to pick up. So with that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.